Ever feel like you're constantly plugged in, bombarded with information, rushing from one thing to the next, always doing but never really being?
Yeah.
Well, today,
Hmm.
we're diving into a book that argues we can find a powerful antidote to this modern frenzy
Okay.
in the most unexpected place,
Yeah.
stillness.
Interesting.
It's not about becoming a hermit or meditating for hours on end.
Right.
It's about finding pockets of quiet and contemplation in our everyday lives
Hmm.
and learning to tap in to the transformative power of simply being.
I like that.
The book is Pico Iyer's The Art of Stillness, Adventures in Going Nowhere,
Mm.
which I have to admit is a pretty intriguing title.
It is, and I think it beautifully captures the essence of the book.
Yeah.
Pico Iyer, for those who don't know, is a longtime journalist for Time magazine.
Wow.
Someone who's spent his career traveling the world and reporting on global affairs.
So it's even more fascinating that he turned his attention to the power of stillness.
Yeah, exactly. It speaks to a universal human need, this yearning for stillness amidst the chaos, regardless of our profession or lifestyle.
Mm.
He's not offering a guide to meditation or a religious text, but rather an invitation to explore a way of life that embraces stillness as a source of strength and clarity.
Okay, so let's unpack this idea of stillness.
Okay.
It's more than just physical inactivity, right?
Right. Think of it as a mental state, a quieting of the mind, a deliberate stepping back from the constant barrage of information and stimulation.
Mhm.
It's about cultivating a sense of presence, of being fully engaged in the current moment,
Mhm.
rather than letting your mind race ahead to the next task or dwell on the past.
This resonates with me so much.
Yeah.
It's like hitting the pause button on that endless mental chatter that seems to dominate our lives.
Exactly. And that chatter, that mental noise can be exhausting.
Yeah.
It drains our energy and prevents us from connecting with ourselves and the world around us in a meaningful way.
Iyer shares his own journey in the book, leaving a high-powered job in Manhattan to embrace a simpler life in Kyoto.
Right.
What prompted that drastic change?
He realized that constantly seeking external change, new jobs, new places, wasn't fulfilling.
Wow.
It was about shifting his internal lens, his perspective, rather than always seeking external validation or stimulation.
That's a powerful insight, isn't it?
It is.
Where we are physically matters less than the perspective we choose to adopt.
Yeah.
He also talks about Leonard Cohen, the celebrated singer-songwriter
Yeah.
who found solace in Zen Buddhism.
Yes. And Cohen's story is fascinating because here's someone who, from the outside, seemed to have it all: fame, fortune, creativity.
Right.
Yet he still felt a void, a longing for something deeper.
Interesting.
He found that fulfillment in stillness in the practice of Zen Buddhism.
And what's interesting is that Cohen didn't completely retreat from the world.
Right.
He didn't become a recluse.
Absolutely. He incorporated stillness into his artistic process, finding that it actually enhanced his creativity. He even went on world tours late in life, demonstrating that stillness isn't about isolation, but about integration.
Hmm.
It's about weaving it into the fabric of our lives, however busy or public they may be.
Iyer also highlights the story of Matthew Ricard, a molecular biologist turned Buddhist monk who's been dubbed the happiest man in the world.
Ricard's story is compelling because it shows us the profound impact stillness can have on our well-being.
Yeah.
He left a successful career in science to pursue a life of contemplation and study of the mind. His experiences provide scientific backing to the benefits of stillness. He's literally studied the neurological and physiological effects of meditation and found tangible evidence of its positive impact on the brain.
One detail that struck me was that Ricard views airplane travel as a form of meditation.
Oh, wow.
It really shows you can cultivate stillness anywhere, even in seemingly mundane or chaotic environments.
It's a perfect illustration of how we can shift our perspective and find moments of stillness amidst the hustle and bustle of modern life. You don't need a mountaintop retreat to experience it.
No.
You can find it on a crowded train in a traffic jam, or even during a stressful meeting.
Right.
It's about training your mind to access that inner calm regardless of your external circumstances.
That makes so much sense. It's not about changing our environment, but changing our relationship to it.
Exactly.
And this brings us to another crucial point. The importance of filtering information in our age, of constant digital overload.
Right.
Something we can all relate to, right?
Yes.
We're bombarded with news opinions and updates, constantly connected to our devices, and it can be utterly overwhelming.
It is. And this constant influx of information doesn't just exhaust us mentally. It also fragments our attention, making it harder to focus and think deeply.
Right.
Iyer highlights Kevin Kelly, often referred to as the father of the World Wide Web.
Wait, even the pioneers of the digital world recognize the need to unplug.
They do. Kelly intentionally disconnects from technology for periods of time to maintain self-awareness and clarity. And he's not alone. There's a growing trend in Silicon Valley of observing an internet Sabbath, intentionally disconnecting from technology for a set period of time each week.
Wow.
It's a powerful statement about the need to step back from the digital world and reconnect with ourselves and the physical world around us.
It seems almost counterintuitive, doesn't it?
It does.
The very people who built our hyper-connected world are now advocating for periods of disconnection.
It speaks volumes about the potential downsides of constant connectivity.
Right.
We've become so accustomed to being plugged in that we often don't realize how it's affecting us until we unplug and experience the difference.
This isn't just about individuals, though, is it?
No.
Iyer also mentions companies like Intel and Google that are incorporating stillness into their work cultures.
That's right. These companies are recognizing that stillness isn't just about personal well-being, but also about productivity and creativity.
Okay.
They're offering mindfulness programs, creating quiet spaces for reflection, and even encouraging employees to take breaks from technology. They're seeing it as an investment rather than a distraction.
So by now you might be thinking, okay, this all sounds great, but how can I possibly find time for stillness in my already jam-packed life? I know I'm feeling that way.
Yeah.
It's a common concern and one that Iyer addresses directly in the book.
Okay.
What does he suggest for those of us who feel like we're constantly running on a treadmill?
He reassures us that stillness doesn't require drastic life changes or hours of meditation each day.
Okay.
It's about making small, intentional shifts in perspective and action. It's about finding those pockets of time in our day, waiting in line, commuting, even brushing our teeth, and using them as opportunities to pause, breathe, and simply be present rather than letting our minds race ahead to the next task.
So it's not about adding another item to our already overflowing to-do list, but about changing how we approach the things we're already doing. I love that, turning everyday moments into opportunities for stillness.
Exactly. It's about cultivating a mindset of presence and awareness, of being fully engaged in whatever you're doing, whether it's washing the dishes or having a conversation with a loved one.
This is already giving me so much to think about.
Yeah.
But before we get too far ahead of ourselves, let's take a pause here and pick up the conversation in part 2 of our deep dive into the art of stillness.
Okay.
We'll delve deeper into the specific benefits of stillness, how it can enhance our creativity and relationships, and explore some practical tips for incorporating it into our daily lives. Stay tuned.
It's interesting how we often associate stillness with inactivity, but you know what the art of stillness emphasizes is that it's really about quieting the mind. It's about creating space for reflection and contemplation.
It's like hitting the pause button on that endless mental chatter, right? And that can be incredibly challenging in today's world, where everything seems to move at warp speed.
It is a challenge, but Iyer argues that it's precisely in those moments of quiet reflection, when we step back from the constant input and allow our minds to settle, that our best ideas often emerge. He connects stillness to creativity in a really compelling way.
So it's not about forcing creativity,
Right.
but about creating the conditions for it to flourish.
Exactly. Think about those times when you've been stuck on a problem or searching for inspiration. Often it's when you step away from your desk, take a walk in nature,
Right.
or simply allow your mind to wander, that the solution or the creative spark suddenly appears.
It's like those aha moments that seem to come out of nowhere,
Yeah,
but often occur when we're not actively trying to force them.
precisely. Iyer even uses the analogy of a writer's secular Sabbath, a period of time set aside for simply letting the mind wander without any specific goal or agenda.
Okay.
It's about creating that fertile ground for creativity to blossom.
And this isn't just for writers, is it?
No.
Anyone who wants to tap into their creative potential, whether they're an artist, an entrepreneur, or simply someone looking to solve a problem in their life,
Right.
can benefit from cultivating stillness.
Absolutely. It's about accessing that deeper well of creativity that resides within each of us.
Yeah.
And it's not about escaping the world, but rather about engaging with it more thoughtfully and effectively.
So if I'm understanding this correctly, stillness isn't about retreating from the world, but rather about stepping back, To gain a clear perspective,
Yeah.
to recharge, and to return to the world with renewed energy and focus.
You've got it. It's about finding that inner balance so that we can show up in the world as our best selves, both personally and professionally.
Okay.
And it's encouraging to see that even big companies are starting to embrace this idea.
Mm-hmm.
Iyer talks about how Intel has a quiet time initiative
Okay.
where employees are encouraged to disconnect from technology for a few hours every week.
That's a pretty bold move for a tech company, isn't it?
It is.
It suggests that they're recognizing the limitations of constant connectivity and the importance of creating space for stillness and reflection.
It is. And it's a recognition that stillness isn't just a nice to have, but a necessity for optimal performance. When we're constantly bombarded with distractions, it's hard to focus and do our best work.
It's like trying to have a conversation in a crowded, noisy room.
Yeah.
You can hear the other person, but it's hard to really listen and understand what they're saying.
That's a great analogy. Our minds are like that crowded room when we're constantly bombarded with information and stimulation.
Mm-hmm.
Stillness is about creating that quiet space where we can actually hear ourselves think,
Right.
where we can connect with our intuition and our deepest wisdom.
Yeah.
It's like weeding the garden of our minds, allowing space for new growth and clarity.
I'm really starting to see how stillness can be integrated into everyday life.
Mm-hmm.
It's not about becoming a hermit, but rather about making small, intentional choices throughout our day to create those pockets of quiet and reflection.
You're exactly right. And those small choices can have a cumulative effect,
Yeah.
creating a ripple of calm and clarity that extends outward, impacting not just our own well-being, but also our interactions with others. One of the things that struck me about Iyer's approach to stillness is that he doesn't present it as some kind of rigid discipline,
Right.
but rather as an exploration and adventure.
That makes it feel much more accessible, doesn't it?
It does.
It's not about adhering to strict rules, but about finding what works for you, what brings you that sense of inner peace and connection.
Yeah.
And the beauty of it is that there's so many ways to cultivate stillness, meditation, yoga, spending time in nature.
Right.
Even just taking a few deep breaths before responding to a stressful email.
Exactly. It's about finding those practices that resonate with you and incorporating them into your life in a way that feels authentic and sustainable.
Mm-hmm.
And it's about remembering that stillness isn't a destination, but an ongoing practice.
Okay.
Some days it will be easier than others.
Right.
The key is to be patient with yourself and keep coming back to it, even if it's just for a few minutes each day.
That's such a valuable reminder.
Yeah.
It's not about achieving some perfect state of Zen, but about making small, conscious choices that nourish our minds and spirits.
Right.
So let's talk about some practical tips from the Art of Stillness on how to actually integrate more stillness into our daily lives.
Okay.
Because it's all well and good to talk about the benefits, but how do we actually make it happen amidst the chaos of modern life?
One of the simplest yet most effective practices Iyer suggests is mindful breathing.
Huh?
It's something we do naturally, but how often do we actually pay attention to our breath?
Right.
He suggests setting aside a few minutes each day to simply focus on the sensation of your breath as it enters and leaves your body.
And the beauty of this practice is that you can do it anywhere, anytime, at your desk, on the bus, even waiting in line at the grocery store.
Yeah.
It's like having a portable oasis of calm that you can access whenever you need it.
You've got it. And it's a practice that can be incredibly grounding, bringing you back to the present moment and helping to quiet those racing thoughts.
Another tip Iyer offers is to cultivate a digital Sabbath. This could involve setting aside a few hours each week or even a whole day
Right.
where you completely disconnect from technology. No phone, no computer, no social media.
It sounds daunting, I know,
Yeah.
but even starting with small increments of time can make a big difference.
Yeah.
Gradually increase the duration as you become more comfortable with the practice.
I can see how it would be incredibly liberating to unplug and reconnect with the real world, even for a short time.
Yeah.
It's like giving your mind a much-needed vacation from the constant stimulation of the digital world.
It is. And it allows you to reconnect with the simple pleasures of life, spending time in nature, having face-to-face conversations, reading a book, pursuing a hobby,
Right.
things that we often neglect when we're constantly plugged in.
Another practice I found intriguing is mindful walking.
This involves bringing full awareness to the act of walking, feeling your feet on the ground,
Okay.
noticing the sensations in your body, paying attention to the sights and sounds around you.
Yeah.
It's a great way to incorporate more movement into your day while also cultivating stillness.
It sounds like a way to transform an ordinary activity into a meditative experience.
It is.
And it's something you can do anywhere,
Right.
whether it's a walk in the park, a stroll around your neighborhood, or even just walking from your car to your office.
Exactly. It's
Yeah.
about finding those opportunities to bring mindfulness into your everyday activities.
These are just a few examples of how we can weave stillness into our daily lives.
Mm,
It's not about achieving some kind of perfect state of zen,
mhm.
but rather about making small conscious choices that nourish our minds and spirits.
Yay! And the more we practice, the more natural it becomes. It's like
Right.
training a muscle.
Yeah.
The more we use it, the stronger it gets.
Uh,
We begin to cultivate a greater sense of awareness and presence in our lives,
okay.
which then extends outward, impacting our relationships and our interactions with the world.
I love that analogy.
Yeah.
It reminds us that cultivating stillness is an ongoing journey, not a destination.
Right.
It's a practice that we can continue to refine and deepen over time.
Mm-hmm.
But before we get too far ahead of ourselves, let's pause here. In the final part of our deep dive, we'll explore how stillness can not only benefit us personally, but also enhance our relationships and our impact on the world. Stay with us. It's amazing how the concept of stillness, which we often think of as inward-focused, can actually have a ripple effect outwards, influencing our relationships and even our impact on the world.
Right. It's true.
Yeah,
You can't pour from an empty cup, as they say.
right.
When we cultivate stillness within ourselves, we have more to give to others.
Mm-hmm.
And the art of stillness really dives into how this practice can transform the way we interact with the people around us.
So how does stillness actually play out in our relationships with others? I'm curious to hear how this works.
Well, for one thing, stillness helps us become better listeners.
Okay.
When our minds are quiet and we're not distracted by our own thoughts and judgments,
Mm.
we're able to truly hear and understand what the other person is saying.
Right.
We're more present in the conversation, not just waiting for our turn to talk.
Which, let's be honest, is a skill that many of us could improve on.
It is.
We often listen with the intent to reply, not to truly understand.
That's a great point. And stillness helps us move beyond that tendency.
Okay.
It allows us to be more present and receptive to the other person's perspective.
Mm-hmm.
And it also cultivates empathy.
Right.
When we're able to access that inner calm, we're more attuned to the emotions and experiences of others.
I could see how that would lead to more compassionate and understanding relationships,
Yeah,
both personally and professionally.
it does.
But Iyer takes this idea even further, doesn't he?
He does.
He argues that stillness can make us more effective agents of change in the world.
He does. And it might seem counterintuitive at first. How can being still lead to action and impact?
Right.
But think about it. When we're constantly reacting to the chaos and urgency of the world around us,
Mm-hmm.
it's hard to see the bigger picture, to discern what truly matters.
We get caught up in the noise and lose sight of our values and our vision.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
But when we create space for stillness, we allow that deeper wisdom to emerge.
Mm-hmm.
We're able to tap into our intuition and our sense of purpose.
Right.
And that clarity then guides our actions in a more meaningful and impactful way.
So it's not about being passive or inactive.
Yeah.
It's about being intentional and aligned with our values.
Yeah.
It's about acting from a place of inner peace and clarity rather than from a place of reactivity and anxiety.
You've got it. And that shift can make all the difference in the world. It
Right.
allows us to move through the world with greater purpose and intention, even when faced with challenges and setbacks.
Mhm.
It's like that quote from Martin Luther King Jr., "If I cannot do great things, I can do small things in a great way."
Wow.
Stillness allows us to infuse even the smallest actions with purpose and meaning.
It's a powerful reminder that we don't need to wait for the perfect moment or the grand gesture to make a difference.
Right.
We can start right where we are with the small everyday choices we make.
Mm.
And I love how the art of stillness empowers us to take ownership of our own peace and well-being and to use that as a foundation for creating positive change in the world.
It's a beautiful message, isn't it?
It is.
And it's a reminder that stillness isn't a luxury reserved for monks and hermits, but a practice available to everyone.
Right.
It's a practice that can transform our lives from the inside out and ripple outward to create a more peaceful and compassionate world.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into the art of stillness, I want to leave our listeners with a question. What's one small step you can take this week to invite more stillness into your life?
Good question.
Maybe it's taking a few mindful breaths before checking your phone in the morning, or going for a walk without headphones, or simply setting aside a few minutes each day to do absolutely nothing.
Right.
Whatever it is, we encourage you to embrace the art of stillness and discover the transformative power it holds.